My name is Victor Furman. Some call me The Voice. I've always been fascinated with human nature, spirituality, science, and the crossroads at which they meet. Join me now and we will explore these topics and so much more with fascinating guests, authors, and experts who will guide us to Destination Unlimited. How may lifelong extraterrestrial encounters and experiences shape our understanding of the universe and the basic tenets of our faith? My guest this week on Destination Unlimited, Marisol Smiley, had her first encounter at the age of 3 and her first abduction experience when she was 6. These continued through her adulthood with several different life forms and also with angelic contact. Today, as the mother to 3 children and grandmother to 11, she has come to learn that humanity has been seeded on Earth and that the benevolent beings that she calls the Shining Ones are watching and waiting for mankind to come together in peace and join our star families. She may be found on Facebook and Instagram, and she joins me this week to share her remarkable story. Please join me in welcoming to Destination Unlimited Marisol Smiley. Welcome, Marisol.
It's great to be here.
Marisol, please share with us the life-changing experience you had when you were 3 years old.
When I was 3 years old, my parents are pastors, so we lived in Hartford, Connecticut. I went to sleep one day and I slept with my sister, Naomi, and I felt the blanket coming off of me and it came off. And so I sat up. I looked at my sister because I thought she was doing it, but she was sound asleep. So I go to the foot of the bed, grab my blanket and cover myself again with it. And then it came off again. And this time it came off a little faster. So I looked at my sister again and she was just laying there. She was sleeping, so it wasn't her. And this time I was a little afraid to get the blanket, but I did anyway. And I grabbed the blanket, and when I sat up to put it over my body, I felt something touch my hand. And when I looked, it was these 2 little blue children. And they looked just like me, except they didn't have much hair, but they were completely blue and their eyes were dark and it smiled at me. So I got happy. I said to myself, it's playtime. So I take the blanket, I put it over my head, I lay on my tummy, and then suddenly I find myself floating. And the blanket comes off and I realize I'm floating and I'm trying to get control over where I'm going, where I'm floating. So I start like swimming. And I didn't have any control anyway. They floated me to my parents' bedroom. And I saw my mom and my dad sleeping. And then I looked and I saw my brother and my other brother sleeping next to my parents in the next bed. And then it brought me back to the room where my sister and I were sleeping. And I could see my sister sound asleep. And I see another little blue child sitting at the ledge of the window. And I'm being floated towards the window, and I got a little scared. So I said in my mind, I'm not allowed to go outside. So they just levitated me back to the middle of the room and gently laid me down. I got up and just went back to bed. I didn't think anything of it. These visits happened not consecutively. The next time they came, this time they took me somewhere. They took me to this room and they sat me down, and it looked like a sterile room of some kind, but there were other children there, maybe like one other child and like other little blue children. So we were sitting in a circle and these little blue kids throw these they look like puzzle pieces, metallic looking triangular shaped little pieces in front of me. So I'm taking these little pieces and I'm trying to put them together. And every time I got one right, it would levitate and it will float around me. And I thought it was just fun. I kept on doing that, but there were other children doing the same thing. They have different pieces, and every time they got them right, it just floated. Then I didn't have anything happen. We moved to another house, and now I'm six. I'm six
Before
years old.
before you talk about being six, I have a question for you.
Yeah.
Who or what did you think these little blue children were?
Honestly, I just thought they were just other children. I didn't know about if they were angels or anything. I didn't have that concept. To me, they were just little blue children that would come and play with me. I
Mm.
didn't think anything of it.
And
I was three. I didn't have I wasn't exposed to like TV or anything like that. My parents were very strict. So they monitored everything we did, what we listened to, what we watched, everything.
and you had no fear of these little children.
No, I felt love. I felt like I was part of the group. They made me feel happy and they brought me joy and they were teaching me things. They were teaching me how to put these puzzle things together and how to levitate these things. It was fun. I didn't think of it as anything strange or out of the ordinary.
Now, as you shared, your parents were pastors. Did you share what happened with them? And if so, what was their response?
I shared what happened to me when I was six.
But not the first time
No,
or
the first
before
time
six.
because I didn't feel any fear.
Okay.
I didn't feel any fear at all.
Okay.
I felt like they were part of my family, like a sibling, a cousin coming to see me and play with me.
Okay. So you felt familial with them.
Yes. N
Absolutely.
Now, when I was six, we moved from that place to our own home. My parents bought a house in Hartford on Baltimore Street, and we went to church every day. This one afternoon on 1969, I believe it was September 1st. So we went to church early that day to my dad was going to clean or sweep the church out or whatever they were doing there. And then came back home that afternoon and I went to sleep. I went straight to my room. I was really tired and I went to bed. I started hearing sobbing, like children crying. Um, so I just listened and I hear like adults murmuring and like I'm hearing adults like crying and like yelping or something like that. It was scary sounds. Mind you, I had a brother who was from my mom's first marriage. He was an alcoholic and he was abusive. And so when he would come over, I would hide and I didn't want to be around him because I felt afraid of him. He used to beat his wife, things like that. So I thought that he came to visit us. So if I pretend I'm sleeping, he's not going to bother me or anything. So I tried to keep my eyes closed, but then I realized that the voices weren't familiar. These were different voices. So I opened my eyes, and when I did, I was surrounded by these graves. And to me, it was the most frightening experience because I had never seen anything like that. They didn't look like the blue children at all. They looked completely foreign. Their eyes were black, completely black, and they had like a frowny face. I tried to scratch one of them that was really close to my face, and it grabbed my hand and put it down. And when I looked with my eyes, because I couldn't really move too much, I looked down and I could see I'm laying on this table and I could see my insides of my body. It traumatized me. Just thinking about it, just really was horrible. So they realized that I could see what they're doing to me. And so I turned to try to see where I am. I tried to turn my head. I could only turn my head just slightly, but I could see this boy and I could see these other children and they were like in cubby holes. It seemed like the walls of this place where I was had like grooves. And in these grooves, there were people, like there were other people in these grooves. And so the table, the light comes off of the table. So now I can't see my guts or anything, my insides. I could see my true self as I am now. And this table starts slowly sliding down So my head is going up and my body. So I'm thinking to myself, this is where I have to get away. I can get away now. They're not going to take me. So I tried to make my body heavy, thinking that I was going to stop them from taking me. But it was of no use because I started floating behind this gray. And as I'm floating, I'm seeing these people in these cubby holes. And I see this girl. And first I saw this boy. Before the table came down, I saw this boy. And I could hear the boy tell me, it's okay. Everything's going to be okay. And so he calmed me. The light came off and I tried to make myself heavy. And now I'm floating and I'm seeing these people in these cubby holes. And some of these cubby holes are turning like a flash of light and the people were disappearing. So that my heart just started. I wanted to scream. I wanted to run. But I couldn't do anything. I was just floating behind this being, this tall gray. And he puts me behind this cubby hole. Now I'm really freaking out. I want to get out. Before he put me in the cubby hole, I see this girl, which I thought was a lady, but then later on, 40 something years later, I found it was a 14-year-old girl. But to me, because I was 6, I thought it was a lady, an older person. And she had her legs crouched and tucked into her chest, and she was holding on, but her face of such shock and fear was like frozen in a fear way that it really, anyway, that experience was extremely terrifying for me. I was left outside in the backyard by these beings. Instead of bringing me back into my room where they took me, they left me outside. I sat up after the light. They helped me down with this light. I couldn't move while I was on the ground, and I saw these two grays get into this like beam of light, and then the ship started rising and it left. I was able to sit up and I felt myself, like my clothes felt wet, moist, like I had been submerged in water. And I started crying. I realized I'm not in my bed. I'm outside. This is really happened to me. And so I walk to the window and I look for some rocks to wake my sister up so she can let me in. Because I knew that if I knocked on the door and my parents let me in, that they were going to ask me how I got outside. And I didn't know how I got outside or how I was going to even explain this. But I tried. So my sister got up. I pointed to the door. So she tried to open the door, but my mom opened the door and brought me in the house and told me that I had to explain it to my dad. The following morning, I sit to have breakfast and my mom tells me, well, I would like you to explain to your father how you got outside last night. And so I took a deep breath and I said, Mom, Dad, you guys are right. Demons really do exist and monsters because they came and took me out of my room last night and left me outside. I don't know why my dad reacted the way he did, but he was very angry and he smacked me. He hit me so hard that I fell and my bowl of cereal fell on me and I ran and hid. A few days later, these men come to our house and I see this black car driving to our house. And these two men, tall men, get out and they're dressed in they look like the FBI people. And they had dark navy blue suits and these fedoras on. And they come and they knock on the door. And my mom told my older sister Naomi to put us all together in one room. And so we could hear everything, but we couldn't see what they were saying to my mom and dad. I could hear my dad crying. I could hear one of the men yelling at my dad and my mom trying to speak English, but her English was broken. And so one of the other men just kept on coming from the kitchen where they had my mom and dad back to the bedroom where we were all sitting. And he just kept on going back and forth. So what happened was these men came into our home and I had been drawing pictures of these alien things and they took everything. They took all the pictures that I drew. They took they took my brother's drawings because he liked to draw flowers and roses and all kinds of birds and beautiful. They even took his drawings. They took every drawing. And then shortly after that, we went to church, and my mom, overheard my mom telling these ladies in church that these federal agent men came to the house and that they took our drawings and that she didn't know why they took drawings that children made. I went through a lot. I tried not to talk about it, but I needed to talk about it. It was something so scary, and I was so scared I couldn't go to sleep, and things kept on happening. The next time it happened, it was 3 years later. Now I'm 9. My sister Naomi is 12 and a half, and we're sleeping in the same room where I was taken. There's a bad storm. I could hear lightning and thunder, and I'm scared of lightning and thunder. So I asked my sister if I could sleep with her. Can I sleep with you? And she tells me, no, I don't want you sleeping with me. You stay in your bed. And so she covers herself with her blanket, and I'm covered, but I still want to see what's going on. So my eyes are peeking out, and I hear this loud lightning, and I see this flash of light, and then suddenly my sister is gone. She's gone, and I'm sitting across her. I'm terrified. I want to run and go get mom and dad and say, hey, something happened to Naomi. She's gone. But now I'm scared to say anything because I don't want her to get spanked, and I don't want to get spanked. So I'm there just in fear of, if telling my parents anything because of the way they reacted when I was 6. So I don't know how long I sat in that bed waiting for my sister to come back. Then I see the lightning again, and it comes back, but this time I see a man. And this man is wearing a robe, and he's got like a purple sash, and his hair is up to his shoulders. And to me, I thought it was Moses. So as soon as that flash came, I see this man, and he comes in with the flash, and then he leaves with the flash. So my sister's back. Now she's back, and she's awake and aware. And I asked her, I said, Naomi, who was that? Was that Moses? And she goes, no, that wasn't Moses. That was Jesus. I says, where did he take you? She says, he took me for a walk. And I says, well, how do you know it was Jesus? He looked like Moses to me. And she says, well, when he told me to take his hand, I looked at his hand and I could see the holes in his wrist. And I says, well, are you sure? She goes, not only that, when he took me for a walk, he took me to this beautiful garden, and I could see that he was barefoot, and I could see the wounds on his feet. And he brought me back home. I said, so you was with God? She says, yes, I was with God. So I didn't think anything of it. I believe in God, I believe in angels. And I was happy that it wasn't the Greys. The impression and what I've learned is that these Greys, these beings, and they're demonic. That first impression that I got and that fear that I felt and the things that they were doing, these angelic beings never did anything like that to me. They have never harmed me. They have shown me things that I don't want to see, that are very scary. But they've never harmed me. They've always told me the truth. They've never done to me what the Greys, what these other entities have done. And mind you, they haven't hurt me as far as I can remember them hurting me. But it was just frightening, the fear that I felt. It was not only their appearance, but it was just the way they looked at me. It looks like it appeared to me, and I felt like it was like a hate, like I was something bad. And I was just a 6-year-old kid, but I felt that feeling of complete and utter fear. I told my mom about Moses and that it was God. And so she says to me that not to fear that angels do exist and that they manifest themselves in different ways. And I says, well, why did Dad behave the way he did. And she says, because your dad doesn't understand that there's other things out there. Yes, he's a minister, and yes, he believes in certain things, but he doesn't understand the way I do. And I says to Mama, where do you get this understanding? And she goes, it's all in the Bible, Marisol. It is all in scripture. She says, this is why you see that I help people. And I don't care what people look like. You should always help someone, anyone that really needs it. If you can help them, help them. And be kind always and respectful, because you could be talking to an angel. And she says to me that angels need to be respected. And we are angels. She says, we're God's angels on this earth, and we're his messengers. I still didn't understand any of this. My father and my mother broke up when I was 11 years old. And I felt some sort of resentment towards church, because I really didn't. I mean, I heard these stories and I thought they were all stories. And then with the things of being just living as a human being and experiencing very negative things in my life, I started losing faith. I thought, well, this is the way it's going to be. And the earth is just a place where evil dwells. And this is just it. There's really no real goodness unless it comes from you. And that made sense. It made sense to me. But I was still trying to fit into a world that I really didn't know. My parents isolated us so much that when we went to school, the first time I heard a bad word, um, I I was shocked. I thought that everybody was like us, and that everybody had respect for their elders, that people were all kind, but I found out that it wasn't that way. I found out that um there are people that just don't understand, and they just don't like you, and it's not something that you have done. It's maybe something they have been through. But I started losing hope in people. I didn't trust people anymore. I didn't even trust church because of the way my parents split up. I consider a minister and a pastor and a parent someone that should always be truthful and honest. And my father wasn't. And the church split up when my mom had to explain, hey, the pastor left with someone and he's abandoned you. So I saw our church literally, we had like 300 people in our church. The half of the church got up and walked out, and the other half just stayed with my mom. And I felt such pain in my heart because all these people were being lost, and it was all because of my dad. I felt betrayed. And my mom, I felt her pain. I felt her shame. It was just something that really changed my whole life. And so I stopped going to church completely and believing. And I just thought that this is the way it was going to be, that everybody was a liar, that there was no real God, that angels really don't exist, that these are just like things from my imagination, that I must be crazy. I went and even sought help when I got older. I thought that these shining ones and these angelic beings and these Pleiadians that were coming to see me were something that was in my mind. And, when you're older and you start reading more about people that have mental illness like schizophrenia and things like that, yeah, I realized later on that, the medication they were giving me was just numbing me to reality, and that it was worse for me. So it was just a really life learning experience of everything that I've been through all the suffering. I ended up in the hospital, and I had pneumonia when I was 16. I ended up having a child at the age of 15. I felt alone. I felt I had to make adult decisions at an age where, as by my age, I was 15, but mentally I was like a 12-year-old, because I really didn't know anything about the world. I didn't even know that I was pregnant. I thought that when you get married, that the spirit of God would come into the couple and that they would have a baby. I didn't even know anything. So can you imagine a 15-year-old going through that and being told by a friend, hey, did this happen to you? And something happening to you and you're having to talk about it when you can't talk about it to anybody, and you try to talk about it to your mom and she doesn't understand because you're bringing shame to the home. So you're scared to say anything because you're bringing shame and you're carrying this. So this is a lot of the things that I've went through. So I neglected myself after I had my daughter. She was 3 weeks old and I went out in the rain, in the cold in February, and I got pneumonia. I felt like my baby was better off without me and that I had brought shame to my mother. So I wanted to die. My mom brought me to the hospital after 7 days of being so sick. I wasn't eating or anything. I weighed 126 pounds. Within 10 days, I only weighed 70. That was my first out-of-body experience. I saw myself laying there and I didn't know what was happening to me. And suddenly I hear my daughter cry and my body, my soul fell back into my body. And when I opened my eyes, I saw gray. I took the little bit of breath I had in myself to call my mom, and I told her, Mom, I'm dying and I don't want you to give my daughter up for adoption. Can you please raise her? Because I'm dying and I'm not going to be here. So she says, no, you're not going to die. So she brings me to the hospital, calls the ambulance. I was in the hospital for 5 months. So for the first 5 months of my daughter's life, I spent my first Mother's Day in the hospital.
Marisol, thank you so much for sharing this very, very personal and very moving story with us. And in the next segment, we'll pick up with what happened after that. My guest is Marisol Smiley. Marisol, how can people find out more about you?
Well, I'm on Facebook, Marisol Smiley. I have like a suit of armor on that profile. There's another fake profile out there that also says Marisol Smiley, but it is not me. I'm also on Instagram, Marisol Smiley. You can find me on Instagram as well.
And we'll be back with more of Marisol after these words on the Om Times Radio Network.
The cutting edge of conscious radio, Om Times Radio, IOM FM. Om Times Magazine is one of the leading online content providers of positivity, wellness, and personal empowerment. A philanthropic organization, their net proceeds are funneled to support worldwide charity initiatives via Humanity Healing International. Through their commitment to creating community and providing conscious content, they aspire to uplift humanity on a global scale. Om Times, co-creating a more conscious lifestyle.
Back on Destination Unlimited, my guest this week is Marisol Smiley. We're talking about her life of contact and experience. Marisol, before we talk about what happened when you were 17, you had shared with me that when you were around the age of 5, you started having dreams and visions. What were those like, and what did you see?
I was 5 years old. I was asleep and I dreamt that my brother had a little friend that would come over every day to play with him. And my dream was that the little boy was coming over and he got struck by a car and killed. So I woke up crying and my mom's by the window and she hears me crying. She says, what's wrong? Come over here. You know, what happened? Why are you crying? And I told her, I says, Mom, I dreamed that Israel's friend, you know, was hit by a car and he's dead. And she says to me, that's just a dream. That's not real. You know, look, he's right there. That was just a dream. So I look and he's there across the street and he looks at me, he looks at my mom and he waves and he runs across the street and right there he gets hit by a car and killed.
Oh.
So my mom just grabbed my face and covered my face and walked and got up and took me away from the window. And yeah, he got that happened like immediately, like right after I dreamed it. And it was surreal. Shortly after that, we moved to the house where I had the abduction by the Greys. And then another time I had a dream when I'm like about 11. I'm 11 years old, and I had this dream about my sister. I have an older sister and an older brother through my mom's first marriage. So I dreamt that my sister was giving birth to a baby. And so I tell my mom, I says, Mom, Anna's going to have another baby. And my mom looked at me and said, No, she's not going to have any babies. Your sister can't have any more children. And I thought, well, I had dreamt that she had a baby. And then that afternoon, my mom gets a call from my sister, and she's pregnant. She's going to have a baby girl. And so my mom comes back and she says, Marisol, I thought that your sister wasn't able to have children because she got surgery, but apparently she's pregnant and she's going to have a little girl. You were absolutely right. So that was another time. I mean, these things kept on happening. Even when I was 14, I had another vision of a terrible car crash. And I don't watch Indy 500. I've never watched it. I've seen it on the news and, every once in a while, but I've never watched it. This time I'm dreaming that I'm watching the Indy 500, and I believe it was 1976. And there's an accident, and about four of these cars just crash into each other and go up in flames. And then I go upstairs, and my mom tells me, Marisol, do you remember that dream you were telling me? I says, yeah. She says, look at the news. And it actually happened. So it came to a point that now my mom's asking me every day what I dreamt. And a lot of the times I would tell her with no problem, but the ones that were coming out were the pretty horrible dreams. So I started thinking to myself, my God, every time I say my dreams, I say it out into the world and it's making it happen. So I thought if I don't say anything and I kept it quiet, that it wouldn't happen. And no, they still happen. I'm supposed to say what I am seeing so that I can help someone. I don't know how I can help by saying what I dream and what I see, but I am compelled to do so to help people. At least that's what my mom told me. She told me that I need to tell people. She says when you can save someone and you can warn them, hey, don't go over there because there's a fire, at least you've done your service to prevent someone from burning. So she says, these visions and these things that you're seeing, you need to write them down and talk about it. Tell people. If you're compelled and you have a dream about a family member or a friend, call them and tell them what you dreamed. It doesn't matter if they laugh at you or they don't believe you, but at least you have let them know. But it came to a point that I've just felt like, please don't ask me, because every time you ask me and I say something or I tell you, it happens. And even today, I at one point I lost faith, but with everything that's been happening and everything that I've experienced, I know that God exists. I know that angels are real, and I know that there are star seeds all over. I'm not the only one. I didn't know what a starseed was. I didn't even know what was happening and why I was experiencing all these things and why these shining people, the star family, came. Now I'm 17. I got my first apartment. I got my daughter, and I had this visit by this tall, very pale man, and he sat me down and he gave me some water. In my dream, he gave me this water and he took me to the balcony, and it wasn't anymore my balcony. I am in another place with this man, tall, glowing, angelic looking man. And he's showing me these giant, I don't know how to explain it. It looked like water in the sky, but they were in form like bubbles of water. And he walked me through one of these bubbles or spheres of water, but I could breathe. There was like no water in there, even though it looked like it was watery. And he brought me into this forest area where there were another person, another woman, and she was naked. The lady was naked. I was naked. This glowing, tall, giant man is clothed. He's not naked, but she and I are naked. And she's trying to say something to me or help me. I couldn't make out what she was saying because like it was like her voice was being muffled. Like when you're underwater and you're talking, you can't really talk. You could hear sounds, but you can't really make out what is being said. So then I see her, these little tiny little children. They look like toddlers, but they're different. They had bigger heads. They were glowing. They were these small, little, tiny, human-looking beings all around this forest coming to me and coming to her. They were like children. They were like hybrid children. They were in this area where and they were meeting with us. And there were these two little tiny human looking glowing children, and they looked like I could see their skull through their hair because their hair was completely white, but they were very, very thin, very fragile looking. And there was a boy and a girl, and they were with me. They're touching me, they're curious about me, and I'm scared to touch them because they look so fragile. Like I could hurt them just by touching them. They look really, really fragile. And then suddenly I'm back in the bubble. I'm back in my balcony and I wake up. I didn't think anything of it. I thought it was just a dream, that these things happen. It's just a dream. I come to find out I missed my period. I'm thinking to myself, oh my God, I can't be pregnant. I'm not sexually active. What's going on? I thought it was maybe I missed a dose of my birth control pill because I was taking birth control pills. And I went to the doctors and I come to find out that I'm pregnant. And I'm like, oh my God, how am I pregnant? And I told my mom, I said, Mom, I'm pregnant and I don't know. She goes, oh, well, maybe it's a false positive, She says, you probably, it'll probably be your period. You probably just missed your cycle. It's just your hormones or something. Well, now I'm going on 2 months and I'm like, well, I need to go back to the doctors and get myself checked out. I need to know for sure what's going on. So when I go back, they make another appointment so that I can get an ultrasound because they can't hear anything. They don't hear any heartbeat. They don't hear nothing. So now they're doing an ultrasound and then the doctor tells me, you're not pregnant, Marisol. You're not pregnant. I says, well, how come I had a positive test? How come this and how come that? She goes to me, well, she goes, you were, but now you're not. Have you been going through any stress? Have you been going through things? Because sometimes when a woman goes through some stress, she can miscarry. She says, so you probably just miscarried. And it was the most heart-wrenching feeling that I had because I realized that they took my baby. And not only once, but twice. And then there's no way that you could really talk to anybody about it because they think that you're nuts. It happened to me again, but this time now I was 19 years old and went to sleep. This is my second apartment. My daughter now is almost 4. So I go to sleep and I had this dream. I had this dream that this tall, angelic being came. And it was like a deja vu dream. Like, okay, I've been down this road before. I've seen this being before. But this time they take me, and I could see I'm in this room with these other people, and there's another woman there. There's two more tall beings, a female and a male, and they're talking to this woman, and she's looking at me, and they're talking about me. And then this tall being comes to me, and he looks at me, and I want to get up, but I can't. And I realize that I'm strapped. I'm strapped on like this bed thing. And it looked like the bed is when you go to get yourself checked by the gynecologist, something like that. But it had like these golden things that were stuck to my ankles, my wrist. And then this thing from the middle of this bed, this metal thing comes and it separates my legs. And I'm trying to hold my legs together. And I'm screaming, and I'm very upset. I don't like what they're doing to me. And then this woman comes, and she holds my head, and she looks me in the eye, and she says to me, "You agreed to this. Everything is going to be okay. I'm here. We agreed to this, remember?" And then I don't remember anything else. I woke up with the father of my children. He woke me up, and so I get up, and he has this strange look in his face, and he looks at me, and he says to me, "What is that?" And I said, "What is what?" He goes, "What is that mark that you have on your wrist?" And so I look, and I got these red, small little dots on my wrist in the shape of a triangle. And it's going all around my wrist. I've got them on both my wrists, on both my ankles, on the back of my neck, and in my inner thighs. And so he gets mad at me. And I'm like, "What are you mad? I don't even know what the heck happened to me. Maybe it was the blanket." Because, sometimes when you fall asleep, you get like blanket marks on your body. So I'm trying to figure out what's going on. Well, he gets up and he leaves. He's angry. I call my mom, and I ask my mom to please come over and check me out. There's something wrong, and I've got these marks, and I don't know what's going on. So my mom and my brother come over, and they see these marks, and I've got these small little dots in the shape of triangles around my wrist. I've got this other mark in the back of my ear, and then my nose starts bleeding. So my mom tells me, "I want to go to the doctors and get checked." So I go to the doctors to get checked. They look at my wrist, and now they're asking me questions. Have I been abused? They're asking me all kinds of questions, and I'm like, "No, I've not been abused." And so they're looking at me all strange because I've got these marks on my ankles, my wrist, and the back of my neck. I come in with a nosebleed, and they don't really give me an answer. Come to figure out later on, 4 years later, when they took me, this time they took me while I was awake and aware. It was the shining ones. These beings come here and they've never left. And I expected the shining ones to be something horrible. But what he explained to me is that just like humans have both good and bad people, well, so do they. And all of them have a different agenda. And that kind of made me think like, oh my God, what is this?
My guest
Okay.
is Marisol Smiley. We'll be back with more after these words on the Om Times Radio Network.
Humanity Healing International is a small nonprofit with a big dream. Since 2007, HHI has been working tirelessly to bring help to communities with little or no hope. Our projects are not broad mandates, nor are they overnight solutions, but they bring the reassurance that no one is alone and that someone cares. To learn more, please visit humanityhealing.org. Humanity Healing is where your heart is.
Back on Destination Unlimited, my guest this week is Marisol Smiley. Marisol, on the last segment, you were talking about these beings that you called the Shining Ones. Who are the Shining Ones?
The Shining Ones are our angelic family. I'm 25 years old. I am staying with my sister, and I went to sleep in the living room. I felt a light on my face. So I turn away from the light. Suddenly I find myself outside. I am awake. I'm outside. I could feel the grass. It's just been cut. And I look next to me, and I'm next to this tall, glowing head man. He's about 8, maybe 9 foot tall. He's wearing a very tight fitting outfit, kind of like a scuba suit. And this outfit had it made him look like the night. I could see his glowing head, and I'm following him into the woods. Now, in this condo where my sister lived in Southern Connecticut, there were these beautiful wooded area. And so I'm walking back there, and suddenly he stops in the middle of these wooded area, and he waves his hand, and this light, like a light opens up, like a portal looking light thing. And we walked through it. Once I walked through it with him, I wasn't in the woods, and I didn't see a ship or anything. But once I walked through that light, I was in some sort of a craft of some kind. It appeared to me to be a craft. And I'm following this glowing head, 8 foot tall being through this craft. And I'm going like around, and I see to my left that there is a huge marble floating wall. I see this giant floating wall, and I'm thinking to myself, oh my God, this thing is floating. How is it doing that? And I'm still following this being. And then he waves his hand in front of this marble wall, and I see these sparkling light things come out of it. I thought I was going to get burned or, hurt by this, but I wasn't. These sparkly lights that were coming out of this marble wall were forming themselves in shapes of the solar system. And so he's trying to get my attention to show me what is going on, but I'm still trying to figure out what is going on with this wall and what are these things doing. So he's trying to explain something to me, and I don't know, I felt really thirsty all of a sudden, and I demanded to have some water. The being wasn't moving fast enough for me, so I kind of rudely asked for water again, and another being showed up in front of me. And this being looked he was very pale. He wasn't glowing. He was about maybe 4 or 5 foot tall, about my height, maybe a little shorter. And his skin looked like a dolphin, like some sort of a fish. And he gave me something to drink. Suddenly, I can hear and see other entities around me. As I look to the right from this giant wall and these other beings behind me, I see this golden door. This door is like ajar, and I see this light walking towards me. I got really scared. I thought I died. I asked him, well, what are you? What kind of an angel are you? And I started saying in my head, a seraphim, a cherubim, a seraphim, what are you? And I was ready to kneel down because as this ginormous light person was coming towards me, he was about 24, 25 foot tall. He was a giant. I was very scared. I thought it was God. I thought I had died and went to heaven, and this was God. And when I went to kneel down, basically I was practically kissing the ground at this point because I'm terrified and I can't really look him straight because of the glowing part of him. I couldn't really look and see his features. I could see his feet. I could see his silhouette of this giant, enormous man coming towards me. And immediately he tells me, do not kneel before me, for you are just like me. And I stand up. And when I stand up, I see this giant man before me, and he dims himself. So now I can see that he has features. He looks like a man, but he is a giant. I I didn't I was just in complete utter shock and fear. He starts showing me through this giant door pathway where he was at. There's like other like little areas where he showed me there's different kinds of plant life and animal life and things that I had never thought were even in existence. He was showing me how precious life is and how much they love us, that they love humanity, that they are here to assist humanity. And he's trying to explain these things to me, but I am in utter shock and I am freaking out a little bit. I'm wondering, I think it was the frequency because my whole body, I could feel like when you're sitting too close to a speaker, of that vibration, that feeling of the sound on your body, I could feel that. So that made me a little bit uneasy. But he walked me through this giant area and he told me that we are their children, that we are like a distant cousin to them. And I asked him, well, why me? You know, I'm not worthy. He didn't mention religion or anything like that to me. He just told me to stand up and not kneel before him because I was just like him. He let me know that that he's an angel and that they choose family and tribes and they follow them throughout their lifespan. They're here to assist humanity. And I didn't feel any more fear. I realized that these beings really do exist and that they're still alive and doing what they're doing, like what they've been doing. Another thing that I had was they allowed me to see my children. I was able to see the children. Now the children are bigger now. They're older. The boy looks a lot like the Shining Ones. The girl looks somewhat like the Shining Ones, but she's a lot smaller. She's smaller than me. But the boy is very tall, just like the Shining One. He's very pale, and he doesn't look too human. He looks more like an angel. He doesn't look like me. The little girl does look like me, somewhat human, but she still has that glow, angelicness about her. And the Watchers still do exist. In 2021, I was out watering my lawn. It's about 7 o'clock in the morning. I feel like something is staring at me and watching me. So I'm in Florida. I live around the lake. So I look around the lake. I don't see anybody. So I keep on watering, but I still feel like something is watching me. So I see a shadow and I decide to look up. I look up and I see this craft. It was a luminous silvery craft with four blue lights underneath it. And when I grabbed my cell phone and I went to snap a picture and it started flying straight up. I snapped one picture and when I looked at the picture, it wasn't a UFO and it wasn't a craft. It was a watcher. Now, to me, when I saw it and it looked like a UFO, it looked like the size of a small plane, like a banner plane. And after I saw the picture and I zoomed in and I saw that it was the watcher, I thought to myself, oh my God, if it actually landed, it would have been extremely, like maybe 40 feet tall. It was a sobering, surreal experience. And the weird and wonderful thing about it was that I was able to capture a picture of it, at least a picture, something to show what it looked like. But even with the picture, you can't really make out a face. You can make the shape out and you can make out the fact that it had these blue orb things underneath it.
And Marisol has these photos on her Facebook page and also on Instagram. Marisol, you have them there?
Yes, I do.
My
They're on my page.
guest is the amazing Marisol Smiley, sharing this wonderful message. Marisol, please share with the listeners one more time where they can see these images and find out more about you.
You can see them it's Marisol Smiley on Facebook or Marisol Smiley on Instagram. Yeah, you could find them on my platforms. I post them and I share my story with people. One thing I want people to know is that angels are real. They really do exist. Always have faith, and no matter what you're going through in life, just know that you are so precious and you are loved, and you're not alone. Pray. Don't be afraid to pray. And yeah, we do have God consciousness within us, but that doesn't mean that we're gods. We're capable of creating.
Marisol, thank you so much for sharing that very positive message and all of the wisdom that you've gained.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
And thank you for joining us on Destination Unlimited. I'm Victor, the Voice Furman. Have a wonderful week.